रामा पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा शुक्लां ब्रह्म विचारसार परमा आद्यां जगद्व्यापिनीं वीणा पुस्तकधारिणीं अभयदा जाड्यान्धकारापहा हस्ते स्फाटिकमालिकां विदधतीं पद्मासने संस्थितां वन्दे तां परमेश्वरीं भगवतीं बुद्धिप्रदां शारदाम्।
On behalf of our college, I bid a very warm welcome to today's speaker who took out their valuable time and join us today to be a part of this webinar. I welcome our expert speakers and guests for the webinar, Dr. M.U. Kharat sir. Sir is a professor and head of computer engineering department at MIT's Institute of Engineering, Bhujbal Knowledge City, Nashik. Sir having more than 25 years experience in industry, education and research. Sir guided 7 PhDs and 35 ME MTech students for research. Sir has work on different bodies such as a nodal center in charge for Amrita Virtual Lab, Regional Student Coordinator RSC CSI India for Region VI, Maharashtra and Goa. Sir is a member, Board of Studies and Faculty of Engineering, Savitribai Phule Pune University. Sir has published one book of strategy for CFG induction using genetic algorithm. Sir has published 12 national and 80 plus international papers. Sir has fetched more than 10 lakh grants for research activity. Now, we will virtually felicitate our today's expert speaker and guest of honor, Dr. M.U. Kharat sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much.
Okay, welcome, sir. I would also like to offer my regards to all the participants who made this webinar functional in such a hard times. We are truly delighted with your presence. Now, I request Professor M.G. Zinsole sir, Student Development Officer and Head of ENTC Department to address the students.
Thank you, madam. Good morning, sir, and good morning, everyone. Am I audible?
Yeah, good morning.
Welcome to today's webinar on how to write a research paper. Thank you all the participants and respected Dr. M.U. Kharat sir for joining us. My name is Professor Mahesh Chinsole. I am the Student Development Officer and Head of ENTC Department at Sharad Chandra Pawar College of Engineering, Kothur, Pune. Our Sharad Chandra Pawar College of Engineering is education.
Thank you.
Today we have respected Dr. M.U. Kharat sir as a guest speaker. Madam has given a brief introduction about the sir. Welcome, sir, and thank you for accepting our invitation and joining with us. The agenda for today's webinar is how to write a research paper and what are the different elements while writing the research papers.
Yes.
Before we get started, I would like to over few instructions for the participants so that they can properly participate in the webinar. First of all, request to all the participants, keep your mic on silent mode, means mute yourself during the webinar. if you have any questions, you can write your questions in chat box. We will collect all these questions at the end of this webinar and will answer them during the question answer session. A recorded version of this webinar will be available over YouTube in few days at our college channel SPCOE webinar series. Once again, thank you for all the participants and respected Dr. MU Kharat sir for joining with us. Over to Nalavade madam.
Thank you, sir. Now, I request our respected principal, Dr. Gio Kharat sir, to guide us.
Am I audible, ma'am? Am I
Yes,
audible?
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Good morning to one and all.
Good morning, sir. Good morning.
Yes. Before I start, this request to the host also, please mute your mic. Otherwise, it will give a disturbance whenever there's some expert is delivering lecture. Now, on the behalf of Sharat Chandra Pawar College of Engineering, I welcome Dr. M.U. Kharat sir and all the participants from various institutes. Now, we have the various webinar series in our college, from our college. So one of them is research. So in this research webinar series, so we have the first webinar on literature survey by Dr. Bhalke, Pune University. Second is about the topic selection and research approach by Dr. Gulhane, again from Pune University. Next is the effective proposal writing for research and funding by Dr. Mahalle, again from Pune University. And now this is the fourth webinar in this series, how to write a research paper. Now, whenever we are in academic activities, as in this profession, the research is very important activity. And in this activity, most of us are very rarely known with the how the research is, what is the research. So we have started this webinar series, starting from what is research, how to research literature survey. We have seen that 50% work is completed whenever proper literature survey is completed and topic selected. Now, again, we have seen about the how to get the proposal for the funding. Now, writing the research paper and writing the paper for the writing the research for funding or submitting the research for funding, it's totally different. So we have seen all these things. Now, in this series, we'll see the how to write the research paper. Again, what is that research? How to write research paper means not how to write research paper physically, how to work in the research. So today we have the well-known person, Dr. M.U. Kharat sir from Bhujban Knowledge City. So he has been introduced by the host, but I think I have he has forgotten two things. I want to add one thing. He has worked as a principal at Anuradha Engineering College, Chikli, and again as a principal as the Ladar College of Engineering in Buldhana. So again, he is involved in the that software activities of his sanstha as a whole, not only for the college. So with this, I close and I welcome all the participants and hope we'll get a good information regarding the research. Thank you very much, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. With all those words, I request Dr. M.U. Kharat sir deliver the webinar.
Okay. Thank you very much, Monica Nalavade madam, for introducing me to this August gathering, August participants of this particular webinar series. And thank you to the principal, Professor Dr. G.U. Kharat sir, for his continuous efforts, for his continuous involvement in the development of the institute. And I am continuously observing that every year such renowned, such good activities are being organized by the Sharat Chandra Pawar College of Engineering, Otur, and I congratulate them for achieving the best college of the region, and that too for the, you can say, the rural part, wherein the basic objective of Government of India, state government is getting served that the rural community should also get involved in the technological development. So I congratulate the entire team, and the trustees management of the Sharat Chandra Pawar College of Engineering, and all organizers that they have given me a chance to share something about the research, and that too to focus that how to write the research paper. So I'll try to justify my today's role through certain upcoming slides and their discussions on those slides. First of all, let us proceed further. Ma'am, how many participants do you expect? Around 71 participants are there. Shall we start?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much. Now see here, as rightly pointed out by Principal Dr. J.U. Kharaj sir, that how to write the research paper and how to focus the research. See, when we talk about the research, normally every researcher is thinking that this is normal situation, that researcher thinking that he or she has to do something miracle, something different, or something new, or like this. But I believe that research means it is not only the search, it is associated with the word re and then search. It means that already something is existing. We have to reach to that particular through various methods, various ways. That is why we call this as a research. And it is possible only when you are reaching to the basics of that. As close as you are to the basics, your research is that strong. I believe this. So first of all, where every researcher should have in his or her mind that when you are researching something, you are trying to go to the very basics of that particular domain, of that particular aspect, of that particular application, of that particular technology, of that particular topic. Now, when you are going to the basics of that particular aspects of the research, those should be with certain motivations and objectives. I will just introduce this and then we'll elaborate further that how a motivation and objectives of the research can be drawn, and then further I will discuss about the how to write a paper. See, when you talk about the motivation of a research maybe of any field, then it can be research in the arts, commerce, science, engineering, medical, army related applications, or in submarine applications, anywhere. Motivation must be related to the social aspects of that particular research. What a research you are doing, what are their social aspects? Means suppose I got motivated from some doctor that while analyzing the various images scanned through different technologies, scanned through different machineries, I got motivated that how can I help out that to that particular doctor so that those images can be more informative. Now, when I'm with the intention of helping out to the doctor, helping out to the patients, this is something social. And related to that, I'm just quoting this example. Related to that, if objectives one has to draw, then objective can be how to enhance the image by using certain techniques, maybe your wavelet transform, maybe something other transforms for the image transformation. So that is the objective. It means objectives must be very technical, whereas motivation must be social. So what are technical things you are narrating, you are drawing, maybe then related to any algorithm, maybe related to any process, maybe related to any particular mathematical modeling, maybe related to say any particular specific history-based concepts. All those go to the objective side. Whereas social impacts and every other thing goes toward the motivation side. Now with this clarity of the motivation and objectives, one has to define that what are the motivation behind doing that research work and objectives of that research work. Once you define these motivation and objectives of the research work, then there comes what is your objective of writing a research paper. What is your objective of writing a research paper? Normally, writing a research paper is not only meant by gathering some information, arranging it in some particular fashion and sending it to some publication. It's not the only criteria. Writing a research paper involves or writing ability, rather, I must say, writing research paper or writing ability towards the research can involve your presentation, can involve your point of discussion, can involve narration of some of the points in a specific format, like we share now. Normally we talk about the IEEE format or ACM format or any other formats. So presenting things in those respective format is not merely the writing research paper, but along with that, your presentation skill, your ability to write down or even to share your knowledge, to share your conceptualities with the community. And community means your research community, or you can say the students, research scholars, your experts of that field. In what way you are communicating with them, that is what the attitude towards the presentation of the research. And writing research paper is one of the concepts of presenting yourself to the community. So objective of research paper writing must involve the presentation of your work with proper approach. And what that proper approach is, that I will try to focus in this today's presentation, which is directly related to the presenting or writing your research paper for your research. Before going to this, I request you all that please mark, even please observe these PPTs that I am going to share with you all. These are the PPTs, means PowerPoint presentation. So whatever line I have narrated over here in entire PPT, it is just point, and I am elaborating that point. It is not something matter that I have written in the details or in the type of definition, in the type of some paragraph or something like. No, it is PowerPoint presentation, means whatever point you are discussing, that point should be with the power, and that power must be there with you as a research scholar, not just to read out the PPT. You please observe this in the entire PPT, around 20-21 PPTs are there. So you can observe this. Everywhere you will find just a point, and that point is to be elaborated, that point is to be presented through the research community, and that is what the presentation style. This is also one of the aspects of how to write a research, not only for the paper, but how to write a research towards the PowerPoint presentation. And normally these kind of concepts, these kinds of aspects are missing, that we normally observe when we go through any particular presentation of a researcher. Here, what is the need of publication? Need of publication means one has to analyze, one has to go through the aspects that why, and this question should be asked to every individual, that why I am writing this paper, why it is needed to publish this, not just to comply with the requirement of PG thesis or PhD thesis. If your objective is like that, it is not a proper research attitude. Need of publication must be communicating my information, communicating my research, communicating my gathering, communicating my add-on knowledge to the community, so that entire research community will come to know that yes, with this particular paper, with this particular approach, something which is added by that particular research scholar is known now to the society, is known to the community. So that need of publication is to be identified first. And that need is not merely to comply with the requirement of the thesis, but apart from that, it should be for communicating your information, communicating your knowledge to the community and getting their feedback. Not only communication, getting their feedback. And that feedback is nothing but your citations. How your work is getting cited in the different papers, in the different research work. And it is possible only when your work is strong, your work is with certain value addition. And don't think that you will get this kind of feedback within a 1 month or within 15 days or 6 months or 1 year. It takes its own time, because through the research community, we do not know that how many research scholars are there working with this particular field, having this particular domain as a target domain for their research work. And as and when they will come across your reference, come across your work, they will be citing it, they will be giving feedback to you directly or indirectly. And very important is that whatever you are presenting, you are writing, that should be with well proper addressed for getting feedback. It should be with proper citation, that is your affiliation. Okay, then only you can get the feedback. And to get that feedback, to communicate your information, your knowledge to the community should be the need of publication. That is your need of a researcher. Then comes the ways of publication. As I told you that there are different ways of presenting your work. Some may present the work on certain platform like conference, on certain platform like workshop, on certain platforms like some PhD consortiums, some platforms wherein you can say you are sending the journal to the specific publication. That too with the journal of your specific domain, not for any intercross domain. Try to send your publication, your work for publication to the respective domain only by identifying the ways, and ways are through conference, through PhD consortium, through the platforms available to share the knowledge with the other researchers of the same domain, to the specific research journal, specific publication, through the book, even through your notes, through your literature material, maybe nowadays through audio video material. And all these, either of the ways you can follow for giving your work as a publication in that respective, you can say, the way of getting your work published. Then types of publications. Now see, types of publications means suppose I have worked something with certain research papers, and through those research papers I have achieved something, and I have reviewed that. Let us say I have studied 10 papers, and out of those 10 papers, while studying, I come to know about some aspects that, yes, what particular work I have studied, and I have reviewed further, not only studied, and what is my review towards that particular publication, towards that particular research work, towards that particular paper. If I am writing that as a review on those papers in that specific domain, in that specific title, in that specific topic, then that publication comes under the review paper, under the survey paper. Another is theoretical one, conceptual one. So I have studied some paper and I come to know about certain conceptualities, and I think that based on my work, based on my studies, something new can be added in that publication, and this is like this. So that publication, that types of publication comes under the value addition with certain review, but conceptual. But it comes under the conceptual or the theoretical aspects. Another type of publication can be your work that you have worked out, you have experimented, you have tested, and then published. That comes under the title of, under the category of experimentation based publication. Some publications can be hypothetical. If based on certain concept, I have taken that concept and now proceeding further with certain hypothetical aspects of that particular concept and then narrating. So that comes as a hypothetical publication type. And as a combination of all these types of publication, you can write certain aspects, you can write some of the things and narrate those in the form of some paper, in the form of some presentation for the publication. Are you getting? Yes? Are you getting anyone?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, see, with this particular need of publication, ways of publication and types of publications, there comes organizing research paper and its contents. This is very important. Not only organizing the research paper, the content of the research aspect must be properly justified. That is why I have added the word over here, that is organizing the research paper and respective contents. Contents means what? Suppose with a specific format of, let us say, as per the need of that particular conference, as per the need of that specific journal, they are imposing certain bindings upon the researcher that you have to represent your work in this specific format. So I am following that format. But in that format, some of the titles or subtitles are there for which my contents are not matching. I don't have contents related to that specific titles or subtitles. Then how can I proceed? Normally, such kind of communication gaps we normally observe with the researchers. Like if somebody is working with the big data analytics, wherein everything is database. Everything is database, and with the established methods, no new algorithm, nothing new is being followed, but they are manipulating, they are working with the, let us say, database. And in some of the paper format, it is asked to write it in the form of algorithm. Then narrating that process can be entered as an algorithm. But related to that, whether that title of writing the algorithm is just getting justified or not, that individual researcher has to justify. that individual researcher has to decide with. Because if I am not following any algorithm, I have not corrected any algorithm, I have not devised any algorithm, and as per the contents, as per the format of that respective conference or the journal paper, I am trying to write something under that title, which is not my information available, then there comes the gap. And that is nothing but poor research aspects of narrating the things. And because of such gaps, I have seen many of the research scholars getting their paper, getting their matter rejected or ask further refinements. So you have to justify the contents while organizing the research papers. Paper and the organization of the research paper and the content, these are two different parameters as such. And those parameters are organizing the research paper means arranging the titles, subtitles, and contents means narrating something under those titles and subtitles very appropriately. Very appropriately. That is very important. And every researcher should have clarity about all this. Now, what are those contents and the organizations? Normally, through some good quality research paper, you will come to know about all this, and that now I will try to elaborate a stepwise organization of research paper and its contents. Normally, when you see any of the research papers, good quality research papers I am talking about, after the title of the paper, you will come to know about the authors, their affiliation with proper information. Please observe that whatever information you are giving as your affiliation, as your email ID, your communication IDs, it should be very proper. And everywhere you try to adopt this practice that with your name, with your affiliation, you are giving your email IDs, so that if any further communication, any further difficulty, any further assistance, any other researcher wants, then that researcher should be in a position to communicate to you directly. So after title, you will find the name and affiliation, and then in many of the papers, after keywords, you get to know about the abstract of the research paper. I have seen many of the researchers that they are writing something else in the abstract, which is not the abstract exactly abstract of their research work. See, abstract means what? Abstract means, see, suppose I am going to any of the cold drink house and asking to that person that please give me one mango shake, one glass of mango shake. I enjoy that one glass of mango shake, pay the bill and come back. Now, just tell me whether I have eaten the mango or whether the mango is being served to me. Have I enjoyed the mango? No, directly I have not done anything on these particular aspects. But maybe because of the essence of that mango, including taste, odor, and color, if I get all those things with that particular cup of shake, I must say then, yes, I have enjoyed the mango shake. Now, when without directly communicating, without directly interacting with any of the mangoes, not having any mango, how I get it is just because of the essence. And such essence of your work must be mentioned in the abstract of your research paper. Are you getting? It means that whatever abstract you are narrating, whatever abstract you are writing, that abstract should reflect the work done by you as your research. See, with every sip of that mango shake, I get the essence of mango. Likewise, with every sentence of your abstract, the researcher, you yourself, your guide, other community of researchers should get the essence of your work. If you are properly matching such kind of essence, then you can say that yes, your abstract is very correct and abstract is on the line of your research work. So abstract is nothing but the essence of your work. Many times, many researchers write something in the abstract, but it is not the abstract. They are writing something as an introduction. Many of the researchers are even writing the results. So it is not expected. Expected thing is that the essence of your work. Now your work is not only your work. Your work is based on certain referrals, certain research papers that you have studied in that particular domain, and then how you have taken up that topic, how you have taken up that work further as your own individual contribution, your own individual research work. And related to that, what your essence you can get collected, maybe as of one paragraph or two paragraph, that is expected under the title of abstract of the research paper. Am I clear? Am I clear to you?
Yes, sir.
So please please do ensure that whatever abstract you are writing, it should reflect the essence of your work. Then comes the introduction of your research paper. This is very important aspect. Normally, people are just copying and pasting the things of the other researchers in the introduction part. No, your introduction should give the exact background of work that you are proposing. See here, you should give the background of your work that you are proposing further in your research paper. The work that you are representing in your further PPTs. The work that you are proposing in your narration. The work that you are sharing, maybe verbally, with the community of the researchers. And that is what the introduction of a research paper. Nothing else. Background with the help of which you are extending, you are proposing your work is expected under this title of the introduction of the research paper. Nothing else. Now, how will you identify the background? You can identify this background only when your literature survey is strong, and from the literature survey you got some knowledge, you got some information. Then only you can write the narration about the introduction very properly in your research paper. So once you are done with the introduction part, with mentioning of proper and correct background of your research work, then there comes, see, normally while going through the other upcoming slides, I will try to more clarify this, because there I found many communication gaps in many of the research papers. After introduction, there comes the research methodology and setup. Now, what that communication gap of the introduction is that people try to write something that what their algorithm is doing, what their mathematical model is doing in the introduction part. No, in the introduction part, you should write about the background, not your proposed things. In the research methodology, in the setup of the research methodology, you should write the things related to your proposed work as a research methodology or as a setup. Means, suppose I am doing work with some algorithm, with certain mathematical model, with certain concepts of the database management and handling, with let us say certain, it may be history based even, it may be history based even, that let us say history based means let us say some accident has occurred and it is the task given to some of the traffic police that to analyze the situation and make a report on that accident. So accident has already happened. The researcher or that particular traffic police, what he or she is supposed to do is to do something with whatever is remain. Whatever is remain over there, with that only they have to analyze and write down something. Isn't it? Now, they should not directly write down their report in the form of research methodology, but they should adopt some techniques, some tools that yes, because of this road situation, this accident might have occurred. Maybe there are chances of overtaking the vehicle, or maybe some bullock cart might have been there, or maybe some light situation might have been changed, or maybe because of the sight problem that accident might have occurred. So all these maybe can be the part of their research methodology, and this shows the types of researchers as a history based, because they are supposed to work only with the remain. Nothing is possible for them to work as an experimentation. If they work with the experimentation, then there will be the new accident, isn't it? So it is the history based. Like this, whenever any type of report you are writing, the appropriate research methodology should be adopted, and that type of research methodology you should write after introduction part of your paper. Because yes, my work is history based, and because of such a situation, these particular aspects I am using in this paper, which are technically, non-technically, with the supported documents. And everywhere with such supported documents means you are mentioning some citations in that particular narration. Citations means the work done by the others that you have referred, and now you are supposed to mention therein. And that too with the proper indexing, with the proper numbering, with the proper affiliation of that particular work done by the others. And setup. Setup is what? Many times you need to write something about your experimental setup. You are supposed to write something about the simulation setup. Many times you are supposed to write something about the models, isn't it? Maybe sometimes hypothetical models. So all these are expected in this particular research methodology and the setup titles. This title may be varying from researcher to researcher. Instead of research methodology and titles, you may use appropriate work as per your work. But expected things should be beyond the background of your work that you have already mentioned in the introduction, and it is taking further one step ahead towards your research work as what methodology you have adopted for this particular research work. And that methodology adopted should be very clearly mentioned in your paper. That is the good sign, good indication of the research work or the presentation of the research work. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Then there comes the contents of research methodology and setup. These are the contents and of your research methodology and the setup. This is the extension of the earlier slide. Now in these contents, with appropriate methodology, with the supportive documents, with the appropriate citation, you should write those. This can be your subpart or subtitle of the earlier title. Contents. Contents means this can be subtitle of your research methodology of your that earlier title, whatever appropriate you find as per your research work. Now, in this content, in this particular content, what is expected that, let us say, I give one example of a empirical research, or let us say laboratory research. Laboratory research means, or empirical research means, see, in the laboratory, suppose I have given my blood for the testing in the pathology lab. They work with as per their traditional methodology, as per their new inventions, and they give me the report. Yes, these are your findings of the blood. Now, these findings of the blood, one more thing, say, any other co-host is there, please keep the track of adding the participants. Please keep the track of adding participants. Participants are continuously coming. Okay. So please keep the track of it, and immediately once it is getting displayed, try to add it.
Yes, sir. Yes.
I am continuously adding those and I am getting disturbed. So please add it at your own. Immediately be very attentive towards this particular aspect. Now, content of the research methodology, it means for the laboratory, whenever I have given my blood for sample and got the report, in that report, they just briefly inform that what technique they have adopted for identifying those contents of the blood sample. They are just narrating something about the methodology that they are adopted in one line. But for the expert in that field, that even one line is nothing but the entire concept, entire, you can say the setup, entire methodology being adopted to that particular identification of the blood samples as a report, as a content. Likewise, let us say, consider the example of empirical research. In case of empirical research, what happens exactly? Empirical research means it is what you are practically finding is altogether different than what theory says. Whatever practically you are finding, it is altogether different than the exact theoretical expectations of that particular observation. You can observe this situation everywhere. Now, in this COVID situation, government is allowing or relaxing certain norms stepwise. And Suyash, say, please keep the track of such addition of the participants. Many participants are coming. Please add it immediately.
So we are adding.
Immediately, as and when they get appear on your screen, please add it.
Yes, sir.
Because that narration is coming on my content, on my slides.
Sir, as you are a co-host.
No, it has to be there. but your attention is equally important. See, when such kind of disturbances disturb the links as well. See, when I say you that when something is getting relaxed by the government in this COVID pandemic situation, it is expected that people should follow the certain rules and regulations. But normally, though government is theoretically asking or appealing the people to follow certain rules, certain norms, but people don't. They are rather playing with such norms. They are rather playing with such norms and getting something else as a challenge to all the community, and we face the drawbacks of violation of those norms set by the government. Likewise, if you are crossing certain signal and you are saying that yes, now your green light is getting converted to the red, what is expected? Expected is that you should apply the brake and stop your vehicle. But practically on the signal, we are observing, we are finding some different situations. Instead of getting the brakes applied, we are finding many vehicles and the drivers that they are applying their accelerator than applying the brakes. They are trying to overcome that signal. It is not expected. Such kind of situations are nothing but the situations related to the empirical research. Such researchers are nothing but these are the gaps of maybe gaps in the situation, gaps in the mentality, gaps in the research work, gaps in the experimentation. Such gaps are normally leading to the certain new avenues of that research domain. Clear? Are you getting this? So
Yes,
such
sir.
kind of contents related to those particular specific research methodologies may be narrated further as a subtitle of your research methodology in the after introduction. After that, there comes the experimentation and processes. So please observe carefully that in the entire slides, only points are mentioned, and all those points I am elaborating. And all these points are very simple that you normally might have earlier used or experienced, or you are habitual of going through such sub points or points. But elaboration of those points is different, and it is having certain research background, like experimentation and processes. Now, after your research methodology, what exactly processes I have adopted for that particular experimentation, for my research work that is expected to be written under this experimentation and the research processes title. Herein, the environment of the experimentation, this environment may be your simulation environment, this environment may be your laboratory environment, this environment may be your client server interaction environment, this experimentation setup may be the setup of your you can say community. So such kind of experimentation and the processes that you have adopted for setting up such experimentation setup, that you should write in the under the title of experimentation and the processes very appropriately. Why? Because excuse me, because this experimentation setup should be universal. This is another concept of the research methodology, that these must be very universal. water experimentation setup in any of the simulating environment or in any of the laboratories, I am following at my institute, I am following at my location. Same setup, same environment. If any other researcher is following at some other place, at some other location, he or she should get the clear idea, and the same setup must give the similar or the same results with the same or similar type of inputs. That is why this experimentation and processes are very important and to be narrated in your research work. Whenever you are writing the experimentation setup, you should be well thorough how to deal with that experimentation setup, how to handle the equipments, how to handle the components, how to set up the simulating environment, what are the first priorities of the setting up. Otherwise, you will not get the proper experimentation done and something else will happen. Simple example, in the chemistry lab laboratory, while preparing the titration experimentation or while doing the titration experimentation, whether acid is to be dropped into the water or water is to be dropped into the acid, if these concepts are not clear or related to this, the experimentation, if proper instructions are not being followed, there are chances of occurrence of certain accidents in your laboratories. It's a simple example. Even if suppose in the simulating environment, if I am executing the inner loop, then the outer loop, then before closing of the inner loop, my outer loop should not be closed. Otherwise, I will be missing the results of the inner loops. Likewise, these processes, these adoption of the techniques must be well narrated in your experimentation and process setups. And such narration is nothing but very much good value addition for your research work. Because whenever some other experts, some other researchers are using your paper, are making use of your research work as a reference, they should be well comfortable. Otherwise, they may be with certain accidents, they may be with certain wrong setup, and their very objective of working with the research domain, with the research topic, with the proper experimentation setup will not serve. So one has to write very appropriately experimentation and the processes about. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Then there comes, and see, all these aspects, all these things you should write in the paper. Where don't forget that we are discussing about how to present, how to write your work. This is all about writing and referring some other material in your research paper. Then there comes the requirements gathering of inputs and inputs for the processes. Yes, I have defined my experimentation setup. I have defined the narration and the processes of experimentation. Then for that experimentation, what sort of inputs are needed? How I am gathering that requirement of the inputs, whether those inputs needs to be pre-processed, whether those inputs needs to be refinement, or whether those inputs are directly available, I can use those as it is. All these concepts, all these things must be very clear when you are working with, you are writing with your research paper. So requirement and gathering of the inputs and processes for the computer engineering field or for the electrical electronics field nowadays, even in the mechanical, nowadays people are working with the available data sets. What question you should ask to yourself before using such data set is, what is the validity, what is the authenticity of that data set? What are the experimentation methodologies adopted over such data sets? Do I need to refine those data sets, or can I make use of those data sets as it is? Shall I adopt certain other tools, techniques to refine those data inputs? Likewise, you should be very thorough about the requirement gathering of your inputs and the processes for processing those inputs. And it is possible only when you are well clear about your experimentation setup, because in the experimentation setup and processes, you are defining the ways out of processing these kind of inputs. If those processes are not well narrated, or those processes are not clear to you, whatever inputs you are working with, those inputs may not give you the appropriate results. So that is why it is very essential to work out on the input gathering and their processes. Then in your research paper, you should be very clear about writing the figures, graphs, algorithms, mathematical models, logical models, or the logical schemas. All these concepts must be clear to you. All these figures, graphs, algorithms must be well narrated, well informed in your paper. Otherwise, what happens? People are mentioning something in the paper which is not being shown in the graph, which is not shown in the figure, in the image, but they are mentioning it. It means that there comes some communication gap. Whatever things I am doing with the help of my algorithm, that I should mention in the narration. But normally, I just write the algorithm and close. It should not happen. Background of your algorithm, what are the main objectives of algorithm, how it processes, that can be the part of your earlier subtitle. But in the algorithmic form, what are your inputs? What are your processes? What are your expected outputs of that algorithm? These you should write in the narration as well. Not only just to writing the algorithm in the stepwise form. There should be some elaboration of those algorithmic steps. Same with the mathematical model. Whatever mathematical model I have devised or I am working with, I should be very clear about the relationship of the variables in that mathematical model. What are the dependent variables? What are the independent variables? If those dependent and independent variables are not clear to me, then my mathematical model will not serve my purpose. And that mathematical model will only be applicable when and only when you are well thorough with the binding values of your inputs, binding values of your outputs, with the appropriate relationships of those variables. If those appropriateness are missing, then that cannot be the proper mathematical model. And then your summation, your integration, your differentiation, your partial differentiation, anything that you are working with may give you the infinite results. They will not come out of the loops many times. And then there are chances of getting something else as a result of your mathematical model. See, I believe that whenever anything goes wrong in this universe, it means that the mathematics behind it, behind that phenomena, behind that action, behind that natural happening is getting disturbed. Because mathematics is very strong. Mathematics is the base of, or let us rather, I believe that mathematics is the language of your science. And this language of science follows certain rules and regulations. Nowhere your mathematics is going in a different way in different locations. Whatever mathematics you are believing on the earth, same mathematics is applicable on other planets also. But their range of variables, their, you can say, the binding of those variables may be different. Like whatever gravitational force on the earth is, it is not on the Mars. There might be some different. It means that the gravitational force G I am defining in my mathematical model, and working on the earth or working on the Mars, that G value has to be with appropriate binding of those limiting values. Isn't it? Whatever values I am binding on the earth, same may not work over there on other planet. So I should know what are the binding values, what are the relationships on the Mars between various mathematical variable that I have included in my mathematical model. And all such relationships of the mathematical model, of your algorithms, of your figures, of graphs, of your logical model, of your logical schema must be well clearly mentioned in your research paper. Otherwise, your research paper is saying one thing and you are saying another thing, and your mathematical model is saying third one. It is very unfortunate part that many of the research scholars, I am finding that they are ignoring the mathematical model, and they say that these are my results, these are my efficiencies, these are my accuracy and precision and many other things. So it's not the appropriate approach. What your basics of the mathematics are there, unless and until you are not understanding, you should not proceed further. Try to understand each and every variable, each and every involvement of the variable in that relationship, in that mathematical equation, and then talk something about that. And then take it further for the experimentation. Are you getting? Now see here, we are slowly going into the depth of writing the research paper. Here, now you are supposed to write with appropriate relationship, with very appropriate correct values about the graphs, about figures, algorithms, mathematical model, logical model, and logical schema, or many more aspects as per your research work. Then there comes, after experimentation, gathering of the inputs, proper appropriate correlationships between the variables. There comes the output and collection of the output and their strategies. Yes, if I am getting the output as a result of my experimentation, I should first define the methodology strategy of collecting the output. Otherwise, many of the outputs will not be collected, and those non-collected outputs may have very huge impact on your research work. So first of all, while talking about the experimentation, apart from the input and processes, you should talk about the methodologies of collection of the outputs, the strategies for collecting the outputs, what output should be collected at what stage of experimentation, or whether that output will be further treated as an input to the another process as an intermediate output or something like. You should be well thorough about all these aspects of collection of the input, output, and their strategies. Now, when I talk about the outputs and their strategies, it is not only merely the collection of the outputs, but for the computer engineering or even for the electrical, electronics, mechanical, the formats of collecting the outputs are also playing major role. Likewise, with what units I am collecting the outputs. What are the expected errors that I can tolerate while collecting the outputs? What are minimum tolerable limits of collection of those outputs? Those I should define. And all these are leading to the units of that output. units. Means, let us say, I am collecting the data in the gigabytes, and some of the bytes of that particular packets are missing. Then I should have my strategy whether to neglect those kind of data or refine the process so that even such a small byte of a data information of a missing packet should not be impacting my output, should not be impacting my experimentation setup. And with that refinement, even I am collecting those missing packets. So such strategies should be adopted when you are defining the methodologies of collection of the outputs. Otherwise, it is very difficult to proceed further with appropriateness of the collection of outputs and their strategies. Mr. Sumant, you please switch off your videos. Mr. Sumant, if you are listening us, please switch off your video. Sumant CM. Yes, thank you. Now, collection of outputs and strategies may involve some other aspects of the experimentation. Likewise, see, there are different situations of these output stages. Output at the earlier stage, output at the intermediate stage, final output. How can I define that this is my initial output, this is my intermediate output, this is my final output? That depends on my objective of the research work. See here, now it is linked with the objective of your research work. If I am interested only in finding the eigenvalues of the matrices as the output, and in my further experimentation setup, there are inverses of those matrices as well. So going for the inversion of the matrices, getting those results collected will be in vain for me. And only the eigenvalues will serve my purpose. So for me, while collecting the outputs, if I stop at the collection of eigenvalues of the matrices, will serve my purpose. But if along with those eigenvalues, if I would like to find out the inversion of an image, then I must go for the inversion algorithm. And after collection of those inversion algorithms, maybe these eigenvalues will be my intermediate output, but my final output will be the output that I am receiving after execution of the inversion algorithm model. Isn't it? So such kind of strategies must be well clearly mentioned in your paper as a collection of output and its strategies. Now, these are one of the aspects of the research paper. Now, see, when you are talking or you are writing something about this, it should be well clearly analogized. It should be well clearly narrated and linked up with the appropriate title of collection of the output and strategies. Okay. Then there comes the working on information and gathering of the knowledge. This is very important because this particular aspect is directly taking you towards your objective, and it contributes, it is contributed further depending on your expertise, your knowledge, and your habituality of that particular domain, of that particular experimentation. Working on the information and generation of the knowledge. See, I have tested my blood sample, got the report, and if I show that report to two different doctors, there can be the two different opinions from that doctors. Based on what? Based on the expertise of that doctor, based on the number of experimentation that those doctors have gone through, based on the knowledge of that doctor, that from that report, respective doctor is interpreting. That is very important. So, and this is the stage wherein your entire gist of the research work lies. What interference, what interpretation, what knowledge you are gathering, you are generating from the information available to you. See, I am using the word information and not the data. You can get the data from your experimentation, but unless your data of the experimentation is not properly formatted as an output strategy, collection of the output strategy, it is not the information. And this information will lead further to the knowledge, and that knowledge depends on your expertise, your habituality of working you in the similar domain, and your knowledge of such kind of many experimentations. And based on these only, you can further interpret about your experimentation. So working with the information and generating knowledge is something different than the data that you are collecting from the experimentation. You are collecting data from the experimentation, that data you are converting into appropriate knowledge, into appropriate information in this particular step, and that you are writing here under this particular title. So only experimentation setup or writing something about the experiment setup will not serve the purpose of good quality paper writing. From the experimentation, you should write the strategy of collection of the output, mentioning of the output, from which then data is getting converted to the information, and then from that information, after analyzing it, you are generating the knowledge. And knowledge generation is nothing but interpretation of the facts. It is nothing but interpretation of the facts based on your results. And many times, many researchers call this as a result analysis. But it is only after having output with the proper formats as the information from which you are generating the knowledge. And then you are further moving towards the interpretation. And this interpretation will lead in further part of your research work that I am coming and I will be explaining in the upcoming slides. And that is nothing but analysis of results and information. Whatever you have based on your knowledge inferred from those earlier states, that you are analyzing, you are identifying, you are trying to correlate with your objectives, you are trying to correlate it with the other new findings that were not available in your objectives. That may happen because while writing the objectives, you have not undergone through the experimentation, but after experimentation, you might have come across certain different results, isn't it? Like many times during this corona period, you might have observed this and experienced many of us that remdesivir is the part of protocol. Now it is no more. It is nowhere as a part of protocol of this treatment, because after interpretation, after gathering of the facts, after analyzing of the results, the information obtained is saying that it is not playing any role on the coronavirus. Of course, we are not the expert of that domain. We should not talk many more about that. But at least as a part of researcher, it should be known to us that how are we analyzing the results and gathering the information as an interpretation of the facts. Facts, I am using word facts, which are always correct. There is no scope of deviation of the facts. Facts are facts. And based on that, whatever my exact observations, my exact meaning, interpretation are there, I should be in a position to write those as a result analysis and information. Those must be the fact based, not any with prejudiced mind, without having any prejudication. Because whenever any experimentation is being carried out by any researcher, he or she should not be with the prejudiced mind. Maybe even based on the past experiment, you should be well prepared for accepting the new facts coming out of your experimentation. Because with what mathematical model, with the correlationship of what variable, with the binding value of what variable, what is the impact of that variable in your mathematical model and further in the experimentation, that you don't know. As you do not know, that is why you are experimenting it as a research, isn't it? You are not repeating the same thing. You are doing research, you are researching something. So that is why you should be well prepared, you should be well thorough for accepting the new facts that you will come across after the experimentation, and analyzing and the narration of those new facts even is very important, and you should write it as a part of your research paper. When you write thoroughly the research paper based on your experimentation, based on your observation, based on your history based on your work, maybe of any type of research it may be then. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Then after all this, there comes the drafting of result analysis and relevancy. I have used the word relevancy. This relevancy, this relativity must be on the line of your objectives of the research work, on the line of your motivation of the research work, on the line of gathering of the information as an output and its interpretation. Relevancy means, suppose I have decided to go in one particular direction, and after experimentation, if I am not reaching to that particular direction, I am reaching to something else, it means that I have adopted the wrong methodology. That may not be known to me, but I have not worked according to the decided methodology. I might have knowingly or unknowingly used some other methodology. That is why I have observed some other results. But whatever methodology you have adopted, let it be some protocol, let it be with some standardization, and based on that methodology, whatever results, whatever facts you have achieved, you should be in a position to correlate with it. Yes, I have obtained this result because of this change in the process, because of this change in the value of the variables, because of these changes in the binding of the variables, because of this particular nature of the variable that I have adopted. Maybe because of this kind of intermediate results that I have skipped out. And such relevancy you should be narrating in your research paper, because narrating such relevancy is expected to be available in your research paper by the various new researchers. Always think that whatever work you are doing, it is going to be referred by somebody else, and in what way the clarity about this research work will be there with that particular researcher, maybe in future, and how will it be clarifying the minimum level of the doubts of that researcher. That is your responsibility while writing the paper, and that I should adopt as a process of drafting the result analysis and their relevancies with each other. There are many papers having no relevancy, with the mathematical model, with the algorithm, with the database model, or even with the, you can say, your data set taken as an input and further processed as output. Recently, with one of the PG thesis, I have observed that the researcher has mentioned that multi-dimensional outputs as an output which is drawn from the single dimension input. So I ask, how you are getting this multi-dimensional outputs converted from a single dimension, or multiple dimension inputs are getting converted into single dimensions? Question was unanswered. Why? Because the conceptuality of that fact, the proper wording of that multidimensional, single dimensional were not used by that researcher. Rather, it was expected that instead of multidimensional or the single dimensional, he would have used narrowing down the dimensionalities. Narrowing down the dimensionalities, it depends on the mathematical model. Then in that mathematical model, what all the variables are used, what are the relevancy of that variable, based on the independent relevancy of or set of those variables, or rather the subsets of those variables, I can then find out the combinations of dimensions. But conceptuality was not clear. So likewise, it is the responsibility of every researcher to draft the result analysis with its relevancy very properly. Otherwise, you will land in very different situation and there will not be any acceptance of your results. And very objective of your starting of your research work will not be served. Isn't it? So one has to take care of this drafting of the result analysis and relevancy. Then drawing points for conclusion. See here, I am not saying that you are drafting the conclusion. First of all, drawing the points of conclusion. This is very important. You should draw the points on what facts, how various points will help out you to conclude your research work, that you should first identify. In almost all theses, including PhD theses, people are writing the conclusion with one paragraph. How can we say that as a conclusion? Of course, size of the matter doesn't matter, but the contents of that conclusion matters, and those contents are very irrelevant with the research work. So that is why before going for such conclusion, you should draw the points of conclusion. What are your points of conclusion? Because your research work is not a small thing. Research work is not a small thing. Or ultimate reaching to the destination is not the research. You are following certain ways, you are following certain paths, you are following certain methodologies, certain processes, certain setups, and then reaching to the conclusion. And entire line on these aspects should be included as a point for conclusion. Yes, because for this point, I am concluding like this. Against this point, I am concluding like this. Against this point, because of this particular change in the aspects of the methodology, I am concluding like this. And that is based on your own contribution. That is based on your own contribution and as per the important point of interpretation of your results analysis. Whatever you are interpreted without prejudice of mind, that you should be narrating as a point of conclusion and further making use of that in the drafting of conclusion with appropriate interpretation of the facts. That should be there. appropriate interpretation of the facts. Appropriate interpretation. Nowadays, maybe because of the updations in the technologies, whatever weather forecast is being forecasted by the authorities, we are observing the same thing. Maybe if you observe the earlier days, there were mismatch of whatever they were forecasting, something else were happening. Isn't it? Because whatever points of the conclusion they were drawing from their experimentation, they were drawing from their experiments, they were drawing from their experience, those were not having any relativity. And if such relativity is getting further disturbed by the nature, then you will not get that result. But how nature will impact, what are the different variables those will impact this situation of raining, or having so much of cold, or having so much of dryness? What are the relevant factors? If I am gathering those factors and having those properly related with their mathematical model, and then making it as a point of conclusion, only point of conclusion, and then after collection of such different points of collection, if I am drafting my conclusion based on those points of collection, then I may read to the appropriate of my interpretation of the facts, and then the ultimate results can be obtained. And nowadays we are observing same thing with the weather forecasting departments. Whatever they are forecasting, many times we are observing the same thing because of implementation of the appropriate technologies, implementation of the appropriate correlationship, implementation of the appropriate interpretation methodologies, and finding of the facts, correlating of the facts, and then confirming the conclusion. Then only we can say that it is very appropriate and you are getting the things as desired. Same thing you can talk about the network environment. Suppose somebody is working with the network environment, or let us say the inputs coming to that particular computer network are following the exponential way, which is going beyond the capacity of the transmission of lines. Then there are many chances of getting congestion, many chances of getting data packets lost, and maybe because of the improper bandwidth, you are not coming to the ultimate result, you are not reaching to the ultimate results expected. So these kind of proper drafting of the conclusions with appropriate interpretation of the facts based on the points that you have drawn from the conclusion is very important, and that is to be mentioned in the research paper as a fact-based conclusion. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Though you are mentioning about the conclusion, then there comes the another aspects of your research paper, that is identifying the scope further and then converting that scope as a future scope of your research work. So after conclusion, based on your research, based on your experimentation, you should identify the scope that yes, I have missed out these things, or let us say this particular methodology, if I change with this particular fact or this algorithm, if I change with these particular parameters or involve such one more variable therein, what will be the impact that I have not experimented, but I am finding that yes, these might have played some different role while experimenting, while analyzing, while collecting. Then those identified scope of the future further research work I should collect first. And those identified scope I can do only when I am fencing my research work. Fencing of research work. Normally for your plot, you are doing the fencing. Yes, this is my plot. Beyond this, there is another somebody else border. Below, before that, there is my plot. Likewise. So I am first of all fencing my research work. Yes, because of my experimentation, because of my setup, these are my line of fencing of my research work. This is my work. Now, after fencing that, after reviewing that, I can say, yeah, this is the adjacent plot. This is the adjacent work that anybody can do. Then that I can recommend to somebody else. Yes, to my friend. Yes, I have purchased this plot. I have phased out it now. This is the adjacent plot which is vacant. Now you can purchase it. So that we can be good neighbor. We can share our knowledge. We can share our information. We are synchronized with each other. And this is possible only when I am fencing my work. And before, after fencing, then you are letting somebody else to enter in your setup. Isn't it? So now see, listen here. Two aspects. Once you have fenced your work, means it is ready to use for others. And the future scope means based on your missing points, you are recommending something else to somebody else in the same domain, in the same environment, and you are welcoming that person to enter your domain of the research work with something is already available with you. Isn't it? Nowadays, this is the very missing parameter. Researchers are not with the mindset of sharing their research work with anybody else. I have found many researchers, many PhD candidates that their head of the department even do not know that he or she has registered for PhD. Then what is you working with such kind of research work? Your neighbor, your co-worker, your family friends, another person of your relative who is having interest in your domain, maybe from other institute. If you are not sharing your work with them, how can you say that your work is strong? It means that your work is inferior. As you are not sharing it, it means that you are accepting your work is inferior. So be broad, come out of this mindset and try to share your work as much as possible to anybody with the openness of mind. That is what the exact research is. If you are not with the openness of mind, you are very reluctant about accepting the facts. And to accept the facts, it is very much desirable for you to be with the mindset of accepting the facts and extend the cooperation to the other researchers as a future work with appropriate directions. And those appropriate directions you only can provide because you have already experimented on those lines. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Then there comes the acknowledgements and the annexures. In your research paper, you should always acknowledge the other researchers. These acknowledgements come even by citing the research work of the others in your regular narration of the paper. Yes, I have used some mathematical model of, let us say, some other author whose paper is mentioned in my bibliography at number 15. So I should mention there as a 15 in my narration of the paper, or author, I should acknowledge that author there itself, so that your plagiarism report will be with minimum plagiarism count. If I am mentioning the appropriate value of indexing, of citing that work done by the other researcher, that is the acknowledgement. Even if I should acknowledge the laboratory in charge, the head of department who has helped out me. I should acknowledge acknowledgement, it is not pleasing somebody else. Acknowledgement is your responsibility. It is your attitude to convey your regards to the person who has contributed, who has helped out, who has come up forward for your research work. To that, it is acknowledgement. Isn't it? See, in many of the theses, PhD thesis, most of times, you find the acknowledgement. Acknowledgement, and then in the acknowledgement, there can be the name of guide, head of the department, other research laboratory, somebody else. And dedicating your work to somebody else is another aspect. Many researchers, I have observed that they have dedicated their research work, their thesis to their parents because they got motivated from them. Motivation is social and acknowledgement is towards the objective, that is technical. Now, this is what I have explained in the first slide. Are you getting? So there is difference between dedicating your work and acknowledging your work. So proper acknowledgement must be there, and then there is expected that you should write the annexures also. Annexures can be some set of data set. Annexures can be some concept that I have used as it is, and I am appending it to my research work. Annexures can be some government GR, let us say some facts, some white paper. That can be the annexure. And such kind of annexure, if possible, you can attach in the hard copy, or you can mention these web links or the source of that particular annexure available in the web, from where the another researchers can get that annexure, so that they can verify what technologies, what methodology you have adopted is correct, or they will find some other ways of getting something more in depth of that particular work. So that is why acknowledging and making use of annexures in your research work is important. These annexures are not your bibliographies or the references. Please note, that is through some other titles like this. There can be the references, bibliographies, and citations of your paper. These citations, bibliographies, and references may include your own published work earlier. Whatever earlier work you have published, that you can also mention in the references, bibliographies. The work done by the others, and that you have referred only. No other citation must be there, should be there, which you have not referred for. When you have not referred anything, and just because he is my guide, I am mentioning his paper in my citation, that is not the proper ethical aspect of the publishing work. So, and whatever I have discussed, all those must follow the ethics. These all must follow the ethics. Pleasing somebody else is not the research work, but acknowledging somebody else is the research work, because there is proper involvement, there is proper aspect through which you got help from that person, from that particular institute, from that particular organization. So references, bibliography, or the citations has got very good importance, because you are not mentioning everything about your references, about your bibliography, about your citations in your thesis, in your paper, in one paper of around, let us say, 15 pages. But other researchers should know that, yes, these are the other authors, these are the other researchers in working in the same domain, from which their work is carried out further by this particular author, by this particular researcher. So with your bibliography, with your mentioning of the references in your research paper, the another researcher is getting the connectivity with all other researchers in that domain, in that field. That is why it is important to work with. Are you getting it? That is why mentioning of the proper references, bibliography, and the citations in the narration of the paper and at the end of the paper also carries the importance. Many researchers ask, sir, is it sufficient that if I mention my 100 references, sir, you have referred only 5 papers and you are mentioning 100 papers. What is use of that? If you have referred 5, mention only 5 because it is ethical aspect. It is ethical aspect. Because of these facts, nowadays, even your citation indexes are adopting certain new methodologies. See, one PhD guide is working with nowadays, it is very unfortunate, with different domains and asking his research scholar to mention all his citation in his paper. Just because his index citation is getting increased. This is not ethical. If I am working in the network domain and my image processing related work is getting cited in with some other research scholar who is working in the network domain, what is use of that? Is it proper? It is appropriate. It is beyond ethics. So appropriateness in mentioning the references is carrying very good impact of your research work. Many times when some thesis comes to any of the experts, they just go through the bibliography. They just go through the references. They just go through your published work, whatever you have published. And based on that, they say that, yes, with this particular publication, these are the experts and the concerned person has referred the papers of the expert in that domain. Because in your references, in your bibliography, you are supposed to mention the author's name, title of that paper, publication of the journal, date, pages, and important is the publication through which that paper is published. All these aspects with certain combinations, appropriate combinations, you need to mention in the references and the bibliography. And through that, if work is in the network domain and I am finding all other domains in the references and bibliography, I immediately come to know that yes, it is not the appropriate work. Many times I find the references of the bibliography of more than 100 papers, and in the narration of the respective paper, there are only 20 mentioned. Means remaining more than 80 are in vain, are not of any use. But just to please somebody else or just to impress somebody else, I am mentioning more than 100 in that paper. This is not the appropriate way. You should be very ethical about mentioning the references and bibliography and citations in your paper when you are narrating your research paper. Is that clear?
Yes, sir, clear.
After this, there comes the another aspect of reviewing the draft of research paper and refinements. After doing entire exercise once only, if I conclude the paper and send it to the publication, then there are chances of getting more and more corrections back. So I have to review it. And this review process is nothing but checking the grammars, checking the spelling mistakes, checking the arrangement of sentences, checking the plagiarism, and all this. I have to do it before sending it for the publication, for the presentation, and related refinements as per the checking list of the check. I have to refine my paper after refinement with the comfortable level of the mindset, I should go further for publication or sending it for the publication. That is what the final step of whatever work you have written as a research paper. You have to review it. After reviewing that particular draft of research paper, after checking it through various parameters that I have discussed, you have to adopt the refinements in that paper. After refinements, you can again send it to your near and dear just to review it. They may suggest some more thing, and then based on that, you can further send it for the publication. If you follow these minimum levels, whatever I have discussed, definitely there will be the good acceptance of your research work, good acceptance of your publication in the good quality journal, I believe in. With this, I conclude. I hope that I tried to justify my role today, and hope that all the participants must have got certain inputs for writing the research paper with certain review of the things that I try to conclude, I try to cover in this session of 2 hours minimum. And at last, before going to the question answer session, my thanks are due, my acknowledgements are due to the organizers of this particular workshop, management trustees of this institute, principal, head of the department of the institute, all participants, and the other experts of this particular webinar series, that they are contributing in this noble cause initiated by this Sharat Chandra Pawar College of Engineering, Kotur. Thank you very much. Now session is open for question answer. Please.
Thank you, sir. It was a very informative session. Participants, if you are having any doubt, you may unmute yourself and you can ask question to the sir. Otherwise, you can put your question in chat box as also.
I am not finding any question in the chat box.
Sir, I think there is no question. You have explained in an excellent way, sir. So all the doubts have been cleared. So I think there is no doubt from the participant side.
It means that nothing is clear. I believe in it means that nothing is clear.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for such an informative session. Definitely, it will be useful for all research.
Yes, please. I request all the participants to please try to follow all these ethics and all these aspects for the presentation, for writing your research paper, and please get your research work known to the community with the appropriate motivation, appropriate objectives that you have set. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now I request to Professor Kapil Dere, sir, give vote of thanks.
Okay. Good afternoon, all of you. Good afternoon, all of you. On behalf of Sharat Chandra Pawar College of Engineering, myself, Professor Kapil Dere, would like to thank our keynote speaker, Dr. M. Kharat sir, for such a wonderful and informative session on how to write research paper. Actually, we enjoy a lot your session, sir. I would like to thank our principal sir, Dr. Kharat sir, to motivate us and even guided us to organize such a webinar. Also, I would like to thank Mr. Mahesh Chinsole sir, Head of ENTC Department and Student Development Officer. Then Mr. Sunil Khatar sir, Head of Computer Department, and Mr. Sachin Jadhav sir, Head of Mechanical Department. Also, special thanks to coordinator, our Bansode, Professor Bansode sir, Training and Placement Officer, also Monica Nalaude ma'am, Assistant Professor from ENTC department to organize such an informative webinar. I would like to thank all the teaching and non-teaching staff of Sharat Chandra Pawar College of Engineering. Then lastly, I would like to thank all the participants for participating in this webinar. So thank you again for truly memorable and informative session. Thank you, sir. Thank you, all of you. Have a nice day.
Okay, thank you. Now I am leaving.
All participants are requested to turn on your video for photo session.
Okay, madam.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank
Thank
you, all.
you. All the best, everybody.
Thank you, sir.